Welcome to Corpse Club, the official podcast of DailyDead.com. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jonathan James, and I'm joined today by Tamika Jones, Bryan Christopher, Derek Anderson, and Scott Drebit. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing a number of topics, including a newly announced makeup effects book, a Blu-ray box set, a true crime documentary, and much more, including more of Killer Sofa. If you heard us talk about it last episode, some of us have now seen it. But first, I wanted to cover a couple topics. We usually save some of these things for the end, but I think that it's important to discuss ahead of time. We know we have some peers and colleagues and listeners who are in Texas, so we just want to extend our best wishes, and we hope everyone's doing well with the winter storm. Having lived in around Buffalo and Niagara Falls, New York for a long time, I know how terrible it is, and we're prepared for it over here. So I know some people have been really affected by the power outages and just by the fact that they're not used to that kind of weather. So infrastructure, driving, all that stuff. We know that people have really, really been impacted. There are some GoFundMes that we've listed on our Daily Dead Twitter account. There are some people who are definitely in need, and I know there are some organizations. So please do seek those out on social media and do help if you can. The other thing I wanted to say was, and again, something that we usually talk about at the end of every episode, and I had mentioned a few episodes back, but my grandfather passed away not too long ago, and I really do appreciate everybody that had reached out. He passed away due to COVID, having just missed a vaccine by a couple of weeks. And so I always want to make sure to let people know, please do keep an eye out for the latest news regarding your COVID vaccine. People who have pre-existing conditions in New York can now sign up. There is availability in some cases. It may not be right by you. It may require a drive. I'm taking some of my family members who haven't been paying attention to the news as much, but I got appointments for them. We're driving a few hours so they can get their vaccine. So just check on your family. Like I said, they may not be keeping up on the news. Check for yourself. There's a lot of pre-existing conditions that are covered, and hopefully, if your state hasn't covered pre-existing conditions yet for the vaccine, they will soon. And so with that out of the way, I did, like I said, wanted to, cover a handful of topics with this episode. We have some pretty cool announcements, but we're also going to talk about some movies and TV shows that we've seen. I want to kick things off by talking about one of our Corpse Club co-founders and co-hosts, Heather Wixson. She is always a driving force both on the podcast and at Daily Dead, and we are super, super excited for the announcement of her upcoming book, Monsters, Makeup, and Effects, Volume 1. And
Yay.
Right?
Woo-hoo-hoo.
So it is the first of 4 volumes. It's due out early. It's due out early summer this year. And, and for people who have followed or picked up her Monster Squad book that came out a couple of years back, you know how extensive that is. Heather is really, really dedicated to not just, covering the horror entertainment industry, but, bringing a voice and preserving the legacy of these makeup effects artists who, are unsung heroes of horror in a lot of cases, right? A lot of people listening to us right now, you're like, oh, well, I know about makeup effects artists and whatnot. And I do get that. But we have to, remember that when it comes to, the Academy Awards, there isn't a dedicated, section for that. When you talk to the average moviegoer, they don't necessarily know the players outside of your major actors or your major, directors. So, the first volume has interviews with Howard Berger, V. Neal, Screaming Mad George, Tom Woodruff Jr., and many, many, many more. And so, this is, it's coming out through Dark Ink. There is a pre-order link already. We have it on dailydead.com. So, you can either just search, Heather Wixson or Dark Ink, and you'll find it. Or if you go to our Twitter account, both on Corpse Club and Daily Dead, we have pre-order and links for more info there as well. But like I said, we're super excited for her, and I really wanted to just, like I said, make mention of that. We'll do more, and we'll have some more details on Daily Dead about it. But I know that all of us here are really proud of Heather, and super excited for her.
And I think this is also good too, like even beyond just the people who, the casual folks who maybe only know one or two, effects artists, the K&B guys, Tom Savini, Screaming Mad George, those folks. Like she covers 80 different people. So odds are you're going to find some people in there that you hadn't heard of before. And that's kind of the point. She's always been very vocal about the fact that, when it comes to the FX community and the makeup community, there are so many more people that don't get the credit that deserve to have their stories told, and that's kind of what this is all about. Having already read Monster Squad, I can only imagine how interesting this next set of volumes of interviews is going to be.
There is no better purveyor or more thorough purveyor of this kind of material, period. There is no one who is more passionate about it or who writes more extensively or better about it, period. Heather is the queen.
Yeah, amen. And it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be really interesting coming off of her previous book to see. I know some of those interviews will be incorporated, but there's going to be so much more new material in it, and just I can imagine the behind the scenes photos are going to be awesome, because I know she's really worked hard to get access to a lot of photos that people have never even seen before, from just massive movies and some of the most iconic and creepy and entertaining creations that we've seen in the horror and sci-fi genres. So I'm super excited. And then the fact that we get not just 1, 2, or 3, but 4 volumes of this is going to be really cool, because I think it's going to be a great way to kind of showcase 20 different artists at a time and really kind of savor the journey through makeup effects history over the last several decades. It's going to be really, really cool to see this come to light.
Yeah, she has literally spent years interviewing different people in the makeup effects industry and collecting their stories. And, and like I said, Derek kind of mentioned, one of the great things too is that, some of these, like I said, even for people who, are really into or work in the horror entertainment industry, some of these may be new stories to you. There are going to be some all new stories, and this is, adding to horror history. So I think it's, like I said, it's a really special and underappreciated area of the horror entertainment industry, and it's just so great to, like I said, to see her focus on this. So, they do have a paperback and hardcover edition, as I had mentioned. They do have, like I said, pre-order links to both. I already pre-ordered a copy, and I'm super excited for this to come out. So I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Hear, hear.
Hooray.
And I did want to talk too about, we're talking about new releases, and I had to talk about this because I had to. And, I had been picking up, a good bit of the Severin box sets, and I got the Al Adamson collection. I'm still working my way through it. I'm like, I got to stop purchasing some of the box sets, and it's just because it's not affordable. And I said, so, it's as much as I want the Giallo collections and then some of the other box sets I've seen, I have a stack already of hundreds of Blu-rays I need to catch up on. So I'm like, I'm going to get through those first, and then I'll buy some of the other stuff. And so if it's out of print, I'll be okay with that. And then I'd kind of made that half promise, because I knew I was going to break it to myself this year. And then Severin was like, well, we have a new box set coming out. And I'm like, well, it's got to be, because they kind of lean more to the Giallo, and I'm like, Giallo box sets lately. And I'm like, it's got to be something like that. It's okay. I won't have to get anything. And then I wake up on the morning of the 12th, and I get the press release that they're releasing the Eurocrypt of Christopher Lee Blu-ray collection.
Who's that?
Yeah, right? And I'm like, oh,
well, that doesn't cater to any of your interests.
No, and I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. And so I immediately, I was like, okay, well, I can post this to Daily Dead, or I could buy it first. It wasn't an early announcement, but I did purchase it immediately.
What is that, insider trading or something?
No, that's why I said that's exactly. I'm like, it was already, the news was already out, but I was like, I got to buy this first. And then I'm like, okay, because I wasn't worried about it selling out, but I was that excited. And so, so I picked it up instantly. what I find interesting about this is that some of these are, for the Christopher Lee movies, I mean, people know a lot of the Draculas, the Wicker Man, things like that. But what you have are some of the movies that have gone public domain. And those movies, because they either didn't have a real distributor or because they were public domain and they were, considered, unfortunately, to add a little more context to this, some of the movies that are public domain are considered lesser value because you don't really retain a lot of IP. So like, Night of the Living Dead was, put on because you didn't have to pay, George Romero. You could put it on any DVD box set. So it'd be like 100 movies and they would just throw Night of the Living Dead on there, unfortunately, like I said, for George Romero. But there were tons of movies like this. And it was like Horror Express, was another one with, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing and Telly Savalas. But then there were some other ones too that are making it in here, like Castle of the Living Dead. That one I know I've seen in terrible condition, but I'm super excited because I've already seen the screenshots of what Severins did to this, and then they look beautiful. So we have Castle of the Living Dead on Blu-ray, Challenge the Devil, Sherlock Holmes and the Deadly Necklace, and the torture chamber of Dr. Sadism, which I actually just saw kind of recently, but again, terrible quality on Amazon. Crypt of the Vampire, and then one that I didn't even know existed, which was Theater Macabre, and he hosted an anthology television series, and I haven't seen it, not familiar with it. Like this completely was over my head. So this is the one. I mean, I'm excited for all of them, but they have. I guess not all of the episodes that survive, but they have 24 of them. They've scanned them in 2K, and they're going to include it in the set.
Holy moly.
So what you're saying is you fell off the wagon hard with this one.
Oh, yeah. I didn't question it. It wasn't.
No hemming or hawing. Like, no, I'm buying this.
Yeah, it was just an instant purchase.
So here's a question for these ones that were in public domain and are getting this, new restoration treatment. Are they able to work with, do they have to find some master version to do that with, or are they able to restore, if they find it on one of those 100 movies DVDs and take that and touch it up, or do you have to be able to go back to some kind of master copy of it?
I am no expert in this, but thankfully they did provide some details in the press release. You can stitch a movie together without having the negative. You could use VHS. I believe an example when they did that was the restored version of Silent Night, Deadly Night. And I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the unedited elements they used were VHS. And I know that they've done that with other movies because they're going to use whatever they have. In the case of public domain movies, or any movie, when a company's trying to restore it, they want the best quality version they can find. Sometimes you'll notice the title card won't be the title that you're used to, and that's because they can find either in a vault in another country or a private collector, they can find a non-US version. And in this case, it looks like they've found different negatives. So for Castle of the Living Dead, for example, it's a 4K scan on an Italian negative. Challenge the Devil is a 2K scan from the Italian negative. Sherlock Holmes is a 2K from the German negative. And even the Theater Macabre, the TV series, they were able to find the original negatives for that. So it looks like they got really lucky in what they were able to find, and they had they were able to have the original film.
See, this is a terrific set for me because I haven't seen any of these. So, but I know of them other than that last one that you mentioned, that the anthology series. So it sounds like even for someone who has seen a fair share of Christopher Lee movies, that there's still, lots of gems out there for us to pick up. So I think that's very exciting too.
Yeah, this set is beautiful. I can't wait to get my hands on this in May.
Yeah, Severin's been killing it on the box sets, it seems like, the last couple of years, where it's just jaw-dropping collections where you're getting so many movies for the price that you're paying, and it's a lot of obscure stuff too. Yeah,
there's just so many people. I mean, I know that there were companies that have kind of been doing it for a while. I mean, a lot of these have to a smaller degree, but I think, Scream Factory kind of really opened the door for that. And then, other companies have been able to, also be really successful with, with their box sets, and they're all just kind of going after, kind of slicing the pie up. It's great for horror fans. But yeah, like we said, it with Scream Factory, we got Arrow, we got Severin, we got Vinegar, Kino. So there's just so many great options, and all of these companies are really taking the time to restore these with care.
Well, as Marty Scorsese very rightly so was going on today, that about the ongoing curation of film is so important, and that's like the thing he's most passionate about, and that's what these companies are doing. It doesn't matter if there's only 3,800 people in the world who like this movie. It exists, and it has a right to exist, and it should be able to be seen and preserved, no matter the quality of the film. The preservation of it is crucial. So yeah, in addition to bringing us movies that we never thought we would see on Blu-ray, we're getting spoiled with extras and features and amazing transfers. So, I don't think the honeymoon phase is over yet for Blu-ray collectors. I really don't.
Especially in the horror genre, because I might just be biased because, we live and breathe this all the time, but it seems like in the horror space, that's where the really diehard restorations and in-depth special features and box sets. I just feel like there's so much more of that going on in horror than maybe any other genre. I just don't see like a comedy box set coming together like so frequently as we do with horror box sets and all the different niches of horror. It just feels like we do a really good job of taking care of the horror genre's past and trying to preserve it for future generations.
And I think that goes especially for when it comes to cover art. Like when you don't see, I don't think other genres taking that kind of care with doing, kind of new, cool, updated cover art the way horror does. And I think that's an extension of kind of the tradition of, one of horror's kind of main, I don't know, bait and switches, or kind of the fun scam that a lot of like really low budget horror guys would do, would be to give like this really big, elaborate, eye-catching cover art to their work. Little did you know that was probably the most money that they put into the whole thing, or the most, it was relatively inexpensive to make something look really good on the cover art. Then you go in and find out like, oh, this was shot on like some dude's 8mm home video. But like, I think that, I think we kind of carry that torch when it comes to, today, really taking the care to make sure the cover art looks as fun and eye-catching as possible.
Yeah, I think there's, I think everybody's, right in that, it's not that we're biased. It's that if you look at it, the horror, like the horror audience is extremely loyal. And we do see that loyalty, obviously, in other genres, in sci-fi, with superhero movies these days. But I think there's maybe a deeper history or a wider library, because for horror, it goes back so far. And because you can produce horror so cheaply that we have, it runs the gamut in terms of the types of movies. Sci-fi, and there are great sci-fi movies that these companies are putting out as well. A lot of these companies, but there's just not as many of them. There's still some many that need to be restored and released, but just not as many as there are horror movies. So it's always very exciting, and especially for me because like I said, anytime I think I've seen a lot, it's like, oh well, here's something new. We always talk about, that we can't necessarily catch up on the new movies that are coming out, but there's so many, hidden gems that either, that may not see the light of day if it's not for companies like this.
I will say one thing. I think it's all over when we finally get a 4K restoration of 1970s Carnival of Blood with Burt Young. When that gets released on Blu-ray, just shut the doors, close the shutters, and just burn it all down, because
that's like the Blu-ray equivalent of like reaching the end of the internet.
Yes, it is. Exactly. Has anyone ever seen that?
I have not.
It's streaming on Prime.
No.
Okay.
It's awful. I saw it at 10. I saw it at 10 when I was much more, indiscriminate. And I remember saying, "This is awful" at 10. And that's a quote. It's terrible. And I don't mean a good terrible. I mean like a mind-numbing. Someone is massaging your skull in a very horrible way. It's awful. It's just awful.
Oh no.
So that's when I know we're done.
Okay. Before that, I need to get my Blu-ray or 4K copy of Deathmaster. I'll keep saying it. I say it at least twice a year.
Why not?
Yeah. Exactly.
Manifest it.
Yeah, we're getting all this other stuff. I may fund it myself. I'm going to start a GoFundMe or something.
A run of 3.
Yeah, that's okay. But yeah, speaking of releases from, because I mentioned Vinegar the other day, with Vinegar Syndrome, it's interesting because every I guess I'll call them like boutique label, they all have like their own kind of themes, and while I found that like Scream Factory will take a lot of like beloved movies and they'll give them a ton of bonus features and a really great transfer, and they've been adding figures. Like I think that's kind of what they're known for, some of the more popular stuff, and I think that Severin's done an excellent job of taking some of the European films, and of course I'm just generalizing, but lately I found that Vinegar Syndrome has been just putting out so many movies that I've just really dug, and they might be movies I haven't seen or haven't seen in a while, and so I've been picking up a lot of stuff from them lately. So I mean, I picked up Spookies previously, that was great, and then just recently, since we last recorded, I watched The Vineyard, and this is a movie that I had remember when we were talking previously about, just going to the VHS store, like this is a VHS that I vividly remember, but I never picked it up. And it was, this like old James Hong, like holding some kind of like potion in his hand.
And here's what boggles my mind is that I did not know this movie existed until like 2 months ago, tops, because I happened to be on Vinegar Syndrome's site because I was going to finally rectify the fact that I didn't own Christmas Evil on Blu-ray. So I was like, okay, I'm going to finally, correct that. And I'm browsing through and I find The Vineyard and I'm like, I'm sorry, there's a late 80s kind of like sleazy grindhouse movie from with James Hong, not only starring but directing it, and I haven't heard of this before. I rarely blind buy anything. I blind bought this movie in a second. And
That's
it is bonkers. There is so much going on in this movie that like I can't even keep up. I guess some of the broad strokes are just James Hong is keeping himself youthful through a combination of the use of a jade amulet that he stole from, I think, his mother. And he has to mix that with the blood of virile young women in the area. So he's got like this sleazy Hollywood manager who's funneling him young actors and actresses to literally like. This would make for a very good double feature with Motel Hell because he's basically harvesting these people in a very similar way to the way that they do in Motel Hell. Yeah, this is a Looney Tunes movie.
It's all over the place, but it definitely was. It was a lot of fun to watch. I mean, there's like an element of Countess Dracula and then also of the Hammer movies, and that like he's kind of playing Dracula there, and that like he welcomes people to his place, they're having fun, and they start, you know, disappearing one by one. But then also it's like heavily low pan influenced. So like he's basically still low pan because he's trying to stay youthful, and he's trying to find like the one person that'll like keep him youthful forever.
Yeah, my big takeaway. Sorry, I was just going to say my big takeaway was that James Hong is very horny, and when he had a chance to direct a movie, he went with it. And hats off to a player, you know, respect.
And you also have to know that, like, he knew going into it that there were going to be comparisons to Lopan because he was Lopan. So, like, there's no way he was doing this without knowing exactly what he was getting into.
Oh, for sure.
Speaking of that, and I did get some of this from the behind the scenes featurette, so it's not like he told me directly. I don't want to misrepresent any of this. But originally, he was looking to shoot a martial arts movie and just couldn't find any interest. So he, you know, and he had already started like scouting locations and things like that, but they just couldn't get all the financing. And so his partner was like, how about we, you know, do a horror movie? Here's the basic pitch. And so they kind of, you know, I guess they said they kind of worked it backwards, where they knew they had the budget and they kind of figured out, well, what story can we kind of fit around this? That being said, like once they had that, then it was all, you know, then he was like heavily involved in figuring this out. But like you can definitely see where this is like, oh, well, let's stitch, you know, a piece of this together and a piece of that together. But, you know, this is like the kind of like, you know, to me, it's kind of like the gems that Vinegar Syndrome releases. And they're like super under the radar, but I always find that, like, so with a lot of their movies, I pick them up. Even if I haven't heard of them or seen them, I find myself enjoying them.
Yeah, I need to see this movie now.
And even though it didn't have it in the title card, it did say it was distributed by New World Pictures as well, which is always usually a good sign for me.
Yeah, no, I remember passing this one at the video stores all the time. And for some reason, I just never, you know, took that plunge until, well, I think it was just shortly before Bryan is when I first finally got around to watching it, because when he picked up the Blu-ray, I remember he texted me and he's like, and I think I had just seen it or something like that. And yeah, no, it's terrific. It's weirder than I thought it was going to be, coming from someone of that age and stature, given that kind of freedom. Like, it's weird. It's a weird movie, and I thank him for it.
And I like the acupuncture. There's some really interesting scenes in there.
Oh God, so yeah, and where that winds up going.
Yeah. So I've gotten acupuncture before. It's been a while. I actually wrote myself to do it. I'm like, when I get out of lockdown, I gotta get some acupuncture. But
James Hong, he'll be in the upcoming Gremlins animated series as one of the voices in that show. So he's still involved in the horror genre, and still it's amazing. According to IMDb, 441 credits.
90 plus years old. 90 plus years old. He's still trucking.
He was actually at the first time Wizard World came to Minneapolis. He was one of the guests, and his panel was like the highlight of the entire experience, and he was so much fun. And they had the Lopan song that someone brought up, and his sense of humor is just so great. And it was just such a joy just seeing him kind of giving the audience some crap, and them just playing that role so well. It was awesome to see him there.
Yeah, it's funny because they did. I wasn't there for it, but one year at Monster Mania a couple of years ago, they did one of the special photo op sessions where he was dressed as Lopan. And usually, I really don't like when they do that, especially with really older folks, because I remember seeing how some of the pictures with Ted White in costume looked like the dude's in his mid 90s, and they have him dressed up as Jason, and it was just this is kind of bumming me out. And so like, it was one of those things where I was like, again, this guy's like 90 years old, like just leave him alone. But apparently joke's on me because he had a grand old time. The pictures I saw of him, he was looking like he was really just having the time of his life. So I guess it's just, a lesson in it's maybe not something to make generalizations about across the board. From person to person, it might be a little different.
Yeah, I haven't taken part in an event where someone dressed up as their original character. I was at Flashback, I think, when Robert Englund dressed up as Freddy. But for some reason, I didn't take part in that.
I wish I'd done that.
I know, and I definitely regret it, and I don't know what I was doing at the time. It might have been one of those things where I was just there for the day, but it doesn't matter. I was there for a day, so I'm not sure what happened there.
I know the line was like, as it should be, the line was really long for that. But I mean, you just, like Heather and Patrick got a killer photo with Freddie, and I was like, damn, I wish I would have done that.
Yeah, see, we should have done it anyway. I don't know what happened there, but
back in 1988, my brother Paul and I went to a car show here in Calgary because Adam West was going to be there with the Batmobile.
Oh.
So we're sitting off to the side, and the Batmobile is there, and of course there's a curtain, a big curtain, and you can see the trailer behind the curtain. So we're just sitting there, we're waiting for everything to start happening, and of course we see all this motion in the trailer and everything like that going back and forth, and then a helicopter starts playing over the loudspeakers as the chopper is landing on the roof of the building, and then Batman will be coming right down. So you see the trailer like rocking back and forth with, I'm assuming, him trying to get out of the trailer. And then you see him come through the curtains, and he makes some joke about having to stop on the roof to beat up the Riddler or something like that.
No, that's fine.
My brother and I we were killing ourselves laughing because he was having a great time. He was selling it. And he didn't look quite like he did on the TV show. Not that he had the tightest physique on the TV show either, which was, I think, part of the joke.
Now, be honest, were you more excited to see Adam West or the Batmobile?
Oh, Adam West. Oh, I wasn't about the gear. Oh, no, I loved the original series. I used to catch up with that on reruns when I was a kid. It was long gone by the time I saw it as a kid, but in certain parts of our country, certain markets would pick up these reruns from the States, and about 2-3 times a year I would get to watch like 6 Batman episodes.
Yeah, I grew up on the reruns. I think like WGN in Chicago used to have them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the Blu-ray set. I've watched it a couple times through, but I actually was just thinking about doing it because I went through all the Batman movies, including the what is it? Did they 66? Did they release, or 67? Whatever it was.
66.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, but anyway, the one Fox released. But yeah, I had seen all those, and I made my way through all the up to Clooney, and I'm like, well, maybe I should just go back and start watching the original TV show.
It's delightful.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, they're actually there's so many. They have a Batman 66. Well, they've done some animated movies, and I haven't seen them. And I don't recall if Adam West did some of the voices for it, because I know this was years back. But I did want to catch those. And they have a Batman 66 comic as well. So.
Yeah, no, it was Adam West. It was both Adam West and Burt Ward.
Nice.
Both came back. I think that was what, five years ago, something like that. Yeah. I think they did 1 or 2 animated movies. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to catch those.
Yeah.
Yeah, my friend had the 66 Batman movie on DVD growing up, and it was that I saw that before the actual TV series from that era, and having seen like the other Batman movies before watching that, it almost felt like watching a spoof movie, like Scary Movie or something like that. But we just remember laughing so much at like the bomb scene where he's trying to figure out where to drop the bomb, and the shark repellent, and it's just like, it was so great.
Good times. Good times.
Right.
Oh, me.
Good times.
Good times.
Okay, so let's see. What are we going to talk about next? Tamika, what have you been watching lately? I know there's a couple of things you've seen. We mentioned a documentary, a TV show. What do you want to talk about?
Let's do Killer Sofa, considering that so many of us had to burn time watching that.
I mean, I don't know if it, to me, I think it's a badge of honor. I didn't see it, so I didn't burn that time, quote unquote. But yeah, let's talk about that. So we, just to catch our Corpse Club listeners up, we did talk about Killer Sofa last time. Now, Tamika, were you aware of Killer Sofa, or had you seen it already?
I was aware of Killer Sofa.
Okay, but you just saw it new.
Yes.
This last week. Okay, perfect. So
Fresh
we talked about Killer Sofa. We kind of joked about the concept, but it got enough interest that we wanted to talk about it during this episode. So some of us, a majority of us, not including me and Derek, have seen Killer Sofa, and I'm curious to hear what you thought about it. So Tamika, yeah, what do you think?
I had such high hopes for Killer Sofa, aka proper title, Killer Lazy Boy.
No.
But,
it's My Lover, My Lazy Boy was the original title.
Oh, that's right.
And why they didn't keep that is beyond me. Maybe the Lazy Boy people slapped them with an injunction.
Yeah, there's no way you could keep that.
But it's spelled just Lazy.
Oh.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I would have to defer to a judge on that one. I'm not qualified.
Mind blown there. But still, no, they should have found a way. I won't say that it's a complete write-off. There are definitely some really interesting moments. So at least, there is that. But if you're going to call the movie My Lover, My Lazy Boy, I was expecting...
You wanted sofa sex.
They played it straightforward, didn't they?
Yes, it's very serious. They take themselves very seriously,
which I think works in its favor and to its detriment a little bit.
Yes, that's brilliant.
Sorry, I think it completely works in its favor because from almost the opening frame where I'm seeing the lazy boy in chains. I just sat back and I said, okay, but here's the thing I found, but here's what kept me there. It's very well made. It looks great.
Yeah. Those expecting this to be like, another Things, that's not what this is.
No. Because just before I started watching this as well, I watched the trailer for a movie called Laundryman. And the tagline for Laundryman is, he never pays for sex. And so I put it out onto social media. What? And of course someone's seen it. And they said, oh no, it's integral to the plot. I'm like, okay. So I watched the trailer and it looks awful. So then I'm in this mood. So then I put on Killer Sofa, or as we said, it should be called My Lover, My Lazy Boy, because the movie's weird anyway. Okay.
True. Yes.
With Killer Sofa, you're expecting an asylum type movie, and instead you get this at times somber look at Jewish religion and Jewish horror, it filtered through a recliner that has buttons on it for eyes
and moves
and manages to kill some people. But it's really strange, but it's really well made, and I kind of relaxed right from that first moment. Like I said, when I saw the recliner in chains, because I thought, okay, I'm willing to go wherever these guys are willing to go. And no, I really dug it.
Interesting. Okay. So how do we feel about the explanation of the lazy boy? Because I'm trying not to like spoil it.
I've got to say that was one of the stronger parts of the movie for me, because at the beginning it seemed like there's kind of all these disparate things going on that like I figured they were never going to explain, but they really kind of bring it all together. Like they, because there's a lot going on that seems like it's disconnected. So, you know, you have this, it opens up with a ritual that you'll see leads to said killer sofa. But there's what seems to be this unrelated side thing going on where our main character has this issue where like people tend to get obsessed with her. So like everyone in her life really just kind of like gets fixated on her. So she has issues with abusive boyfriends and constantly has to move and things like that. And so it seems like there's these things that like, seems like there's a lot of elements that are getting juggled around. Oh, and then there's also this head shop slash like Jewish failed rabbi who is still into kind of like the Jewish occult. So that's kind of where we get our entry path into the Dybbuk, which is the kind of the main mythology of the movie. And he's kind of, you see with his subplots that he's going back to these, he's having these visions of these two people like in the past. And it just seems like there's a lot going on that like they couldn't pick a plot and go with it. But I was very surprised to see that it all comes together and like, it's all like, it's all connected. And they do, I think, a really good job at showing how it's all connected by the end of it.
Yeah, it's a little convoluted, but it does work. Interestingly enough, it's kind of like Pepe Sylvia or Pepe like the string and like connecting the dots.
I got boxes
like,
full of Pepe.
But like, stick with it. If you see this movie, stick with it because it will make sense. I promise.
Now this sounds like a win to me, Tamika. You brought this up as a it came up as almost like a throwaway comment at the start last episode, and now 3 of you have seen it, and it seems like you enjoyed it more than you didn't. So I'll take this as a win.
I'll give it a solid 2.5 to 3 out of 5.
Ooh, really?
Okay.
Very nice.
Like this is a 3. This is a 3.5. The guy who made this is a real talent. This is his first. He's done like 20 years of shorts, and this is his first feature film. It's bonkers. It's Banana Pants, and it's well-made Banana Pants, which is exactly how I like my Banana Pants, frankly.
I think the only thing that I think that keeps us from getting higher than that is that it is kind of a really good comedy. It's really good half comedy, and it's a really good half like straightforward, actually serious horror movie. I don't think they quite blend well. That's always the trick with horror comedies. It's like making those two things come together. And like there were just times where I was like, I think I'd rather be seeing this as more of a straightforward, like really delve into the Dybbuk thing of it and really play it for scares. Or if you're going to do, for me, if you're going to go with the, murderous recliner route, then just go completely over the top with that. So there were, for me, they didn't quite mix the chocolate and the peanut butter together the right way. But separately, the chocolate and the peanut butter were each really good. They just didn't quite blend in the proportions I would have liked.
I think this is, and I can go on record as saying this is probably the best movie you're going to see about a killer recliner. I will
100% agree with that.
Yeah.
For sure.
In fact, I would say the best killer furniture movie you're going to see. Like, I can't imagine Deathbed is better than this.
The bed that eats.
No, it's not. It's not.
But it has the dad from Boy Meets World.
I'll tell you what. It's a hell of a Patton Oswalt joke.
Yes,
it's not much of a movie. That's me.
So I mean, so we're saying Killer Sofa is a win. I have to go see this because it's been haunting me for the last week because I don't know if anybody else has this issue on Amazon Prime, and listeners, let me know. It's not just me. But as I'm scrolling through my Amazon queue, it will sometimes double up on movies. And it's like, as you're like at the end of the queue and you like move to the next, like scroll over, it shows it twice. And so I am regularly seeing Killer Sofa twice in my suggested movie feeds, and I haven't searched for it. So it got it off.
Jeff Bezos is listening.
Exactly. So he's listening, and it wants me to watch Killer Sofa. So
Sorry.
we'll put it on.
No. An Amazon intern is listening.
Oh yeah. It's both are
Sorry.
crazy.
An unpaid Amazon intern is listening.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, sorry. There goes our Amazon sponsorship.
Yep. That's
Damn
it. That's it. And we just made the deal. We just made the deal, Scott.
Oh, sorry.
Rip that up.
Yep.
That's our Scotty. Do.
Okay, Tamika, we have more to talk about though on top of Killer Sofa. So I'm letting you steer here, Tamika. Documentary or TV show?
Documentary or let's do TV show.
Okay. What do you got for us?
Okay. Let's discuss Clarice on CBS. It aired last week. So there's only been one episode. I know that Scott gave us a little preview of his feelings on this show. So I think that's why I picked this over the documentary, because I'm really interested in this conversation as well. So Clarice is so it takes place a year after the events of the Silence of the Lambs, which is a little interesting timeline wise. I'm still trying to figure that out, so I don't really want to bring that up just yet. But so she's still dealing with, catching Buffalo Bill and everything that comes with what she experienced. And so she goes back home to Kentucky and she's solving cases there. I really liked this first episode. I think it shows a lot of promise. I think there's a really interesting fast cut, kind of jumpy cut way of storytelling. Like the editing is very choppy and kind of it's a very artsy choice, which I didn't have an issue with, but I can see why maybe some people are going to have an issue with that if they start watching the show. And again, this is only the first episode, so I have no idea what the rest of the season will look like. But as far as Clarice, I liked seeing her again. I'm curious to know, what is going to happen to her as far as the rest of the season goes. I didn't think it was so bad. I've kind of heard mixed things. So yeah, I'm just really interested to. Oh, I will also say, and I know this is going to sound weird, but hear me out. Okay, this show feels very made for television, and I know it's on TV, but the Hannibal movies felt very rich and beautifully shot and cinematic, and so I think if I have any issue with the show so far, it's that it feels kind of flatly shot and sort of made for television.
You mean compared to the Hannibal show? I just wanted to double check on that.
Oh, sorry. Just anything. The films, the Hannibal show. Yes, the Hannibal show. It just feels disjointed from those other things.
Yeah, I think,
and it's supposed to be kind of like a part of it, but it's shot in a way that feels very separate.
I think
And
that's
that
folks,
sense.
hold on, time out. Before Scott gives his opinion, I do want to tell you all that he's told me on numerous occasions that he hates women and any shows that feature them in positions of power. Go ahead, Scott. What's your opinion on this?
What just happened?
Anywho, as I was saying, what the hell was I saying? Yes, Clarice, of course. I was saying that's a good entry point, I think, for one of the things that I didn't like about the show was that for me, this is the test. If I take Clarice herself out of this show, what am I left with? I'm left with a CBS police procedural that looks like CSI, that looks like the other, Hannibal ripoff, Prodigal Son, which at least is goofy, which it has to its benefits. So with Clarice, that's kind of a problem that the show is very bland. Now, I think what it did do well was deal with Clarice's PTSD, dealing with the Buffalo Bill situation. I think that is handled interestingly, and the performances are very good. But, and I think this is the biggest hurdle it has, it's already been brought up, as Hannibal, the TV show. That was able to take some of this material, shake it about, and create this whole wonderful alternative universe. And Clarice so far just feels like so much of the, this same old, unfortunately.
How many episodes do we have? It's just, I know we're only one in, but is it any idea? 8 episodes, 10 episodes?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
That's a good question, but 4 million people tuned in for the first episode.
I did hear.
Oh, really?
So that's encouraging for ratings. But it's a good question.
I think it's going to be, I think that the real test is going to be how many of those 4 million stay for episode 2.
Oh yeah, that's always, especially after a premiere, like a series premiere.
Yeah.
Was it just CBS All Access, or was it on CBS as well?
No, I think it's on CBS, isn't it?
Oh no, it's regular. It's on the mainframe.
The reason I bring it up is because, and I could be mistaken, I haven't been keeping up with my TV ratings lately, but for a network, 4 is usually not that high. Like 4 is enough to cancel something. So even though it's a lot of people, right? It's millions of people. But I'd be curious at how that compares to Hannibal's ratings, which, while you all talk, I'm going to go find out.
And
I just don't even know at this point how are they still even using like standard Nielsen ratings as a
I think
measuring
it's all
stick?
been adjusted. I think it's all been adjusted now. It has to be, right? I mean,
I would hope so.
Well, I mean, I know they've been behind the curve for a long time on that, because a lot of shows, even up until recently, were getting canceled because they were looking at it just from like live viewings and weren't even taking into account like, people watching it on Hulu the next day or something like that. So hopefully they finally figured out that, there's more to it than night of, because less and less people are doing it when it's airing.
I do have some details on that. But first, actually, it is pretty good if I'm looking at like the ratings for Hannibal. They were averaging 2.9 million viewers. So it looks like this did, get some interest. That being said, traditionally speaking, you'll see a season premiere, series premiere will be front loaded. So you will see a drop off. So it's not,
and
that
listen,
doesn't necessarily mean.
And we're all thinking it, but I'm going to timestamp this mother effer right now and say Hannibal, Netflix, season 4, standby.
It's coming back somewhere. Yeah, it's got to.
When Brian Fuller is when he has some space in that schedule, because it seems like he's involved with so many shows.
It's not even that at this point. It's all contractual. So they just he could never get the rights to it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I had interviewed him when he was when he was working on Hannibal, and he always hoped that he'd get access to it. Every season he asked, and every year MGM would say, well, let's see how the next season goes. And it never came to fruition.
Wait, I'm lost. What never came to fruition?
Bringing Clarice in.
Oh, I think we
Hannibal.
were just talking about, like, I don't think we were necessarily talking about bringing Clarice in. I think we were just talking about Hannibal's coming back in some fashion.
Oh, I want the whole thing. If that's part of his plan, I want the whole thing.
But see, didn't that actually turn out to be kind of a blessing, though? Because by not being able to use Clarice and Silence of the Lambs, they, got creative, and they came up with interesting avenues and different positions to put, these players in. The way it was done was so, and it was done so beautifully too.
Finding and how more ways to torture poor Dr. Chilton.
And without fail, every single time I watched, I said, how the hell did this show up on network television? Every single episode. Amazing. Just amazing.
Yeah, that is a blessing, especially, I mean, we're talking about years ago when, things were a little bit different on network television. It seems like things are a little more restricted. So it is amazing that they were able to have as much creative freedom as they apparently did.
Oh,
and that's what I was curious about with this series too, is that I know CBS is kind of like the top of the food chain when it comes to procedural dramas and that kind of mystery of the week stuff. And I was curious if, how layered this would be as far as is this just another like police procedural, or are they going to incorporate different elements of kind of different genres and that kind of thing? Because obviously, I mean, they've had NCIS for, it feels like 20 years now. And if the formula works, why change it? So I was kind of curious what they would do with the property and maybe like what a multi-season approach to Clarice would look like. Will it eventually, become kind of like an NCIS thing, or will it actually like become more horror as it goes along? Like how much creative freedom is CBS going to give them as far as the network approach? But
I mean, do we want Clarice, season 13?
Let's go.
Like Jag or something like that. But it's a pity. Let's because go. And I don't know her name offhand, but the actress who plays Clarice is terrific.
Yeah. Yes.
She is wonderful, and she's the main. If I'm gonna continue watching the show, and I'm not decided yet, thoughts and prayers. She would be one of the main reasons why I would be tuning into that second episode.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think her name is Rebecca. I remember from the credits. Rebecca Breeds. That's what it is.
Okay.
And I gotta say, her accent, it reminded me, and again, I don't know if, she's from Kentucky. I'm not really familiar with that. It's not really an accent. I guess it's a dialect, but it felt pretty consistent, and it reminded me of a similar dialect that Jodie Foster had. And I thought, okay, it's an interesting touch. Like,
but subtle though, subtle. You know what I mean? Like she wasn't like, hey, I'm doing Jodie Foster, but she would have these little twangs every once in a while that would just, remind you, oh, hey, yeah, this is Clarice Starling, right? Like,
yeah.
But she was terrific. She's really good. She's really, really good.
Oh, they're only doing 5 episodes, apparently.
What? Okay,
Yeah.
now I'm more interested. And because, what's now instead of a long game, we're talking about, 5 hours worth of content, right?
Yeah.
So what? Yeah. And that's it. That's like interesting.
First season 1. Oh, Alex Kurtzman. Yeah. There isn't a director listed for episode 5, but Yeah, there seems to be only 5. So the 5th episode is March 11th.
Yeah, I'll probably keep watching. Damn, I know I will. What am I even doubting myself for?
It's good. It's good. Stick with it, Scotty.
So we're gonna check back in on this then.
Yeah, we'll have to do Clarice updates.
We will. And then,
by the way,
Bryan,
that reminds me of all the times we talk about like, oh, we're going to have to watch that. Oh, we're going to have to check this one out. The one time we do it was for Killer Sofa.
That's what I love about it. That's what I love about it. It was so quick. And the thing is, we had talked about it so much. It's like somebody had to see it. So I'm glad we're back this week to talk about it.
And then it turns out to be good.
Yeah. And that's the best kind of ending.
The bestest.
Best. And then Bryan, just to close the loop on the ratings thing, they do these days. A lot of stations will track not just first day watchers. They may report on how many first day watchers they have, but they'll track like over the course of a week, including DVR and VOD purchases. Okay. So they are getting better with it.
Good.
But I know because we get a lot of those Walking Dead press releases, and they tend to look a little bit more at the long tail.
See, we Google so you don't have to.
Right.
You're welcome, listeners.
I've actually been using Alta Vista.
Good old Alta Vista on your Netscape Navigator.
I've been asking Jeeves.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you been asking Jeeves?
I never use Jeeves. Never.
Tamika, listen to these nerds.
I like how disgusted Jonathan was. Jeeves was a bastard. I'm not asking him anything.
I'm not going to ask him anything.
So smug.
Okay, Tamika, we got, and there's another show. We have another show now. So we're on to the documentary.
Oh, okay. So Netflix, they've been stepping up the horror section for a while, but they are, ever since Making a Murderer and how popular that got, they have just been I'm not saying cranking out in a bad way, but they have been cranking out these true crime documentaries left and right. Interesting. I brought up Making a Murderer because the Eliza Lamb, I hope I'm saying her name correctly. I think it is Eliza Lamb. But the documentary is called Crime Scene, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. And it's interesting I brought up Making a Murderer because this documentary feels like, and so many others that are made for Netflix, I think they took a page from how Making a Murderer was structured. And so there's the specific way that they kind of tackle the story and the case and intercut it with, it's like maybe, I don't want to say stylized, but yeah, it is kind of stylized, like photos or videos or artwork or something kind of, I guess, to keep the flow of the story going. So it doesn't just feel like, and then. So this documentary is definitely no different. It's just like that. But I think it is going to be really good for people who may not have been familiar with Eliza's disappearance. Well, she disappears, but she's later found at the Cecil Hotel. I think it's very informative. I think it tries to not sensationalize, because I think it's really easy to do that with true crime. Not to call out the ID channel or anything, because listen, I spent many years watching the ID channel. But I think there's an attempt to not do that, try to kind of try to unpack everything that surrounded her disappearance, right? Because there's a lot of conspiracies that came up when she went missing, and which usually happens because there's so little information. So then people start to try to fill in the gaps, and then the story, the facts just kind of get lost in the insanity that almost always ensues. And there's a lot of finger pointing, and I think it was this person and that person. So I think that Joe Berlinger, I think is his last name. I think he tries to do, a really good job of tackling all of those things without sensationalizing it. And I think he did a good job of that. Even though I'm familiar with this case, there are things that I learned. And so it is informative. I guess it is informative even though you're familiar. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I like that there's only a few episodes, so you don't, so that it's very kind of to the point. They kind of just stay on the case, on topics. There's not a whole lot of filler. And yeah, I thought it feels weird to say that. It was really enjoyable to watch, but it was enjoyable to watch, and I learned a lot. And I think that whether you're a true crime, person or not, I think it's definitely a good documentary, and it makes you think. I certainly got kind of sucked up into some of the conspiracy theories when everything first happened, because there's so little information. You're just kind of like sifting through everything to try to get to the truth. And unfortunately, some of those theories stuck in my mind. And so when I watched this documentary, it's like, oh, okay, whoa, like, okay, that's interesting. And I always love that. I know we didn't talk about this, but the Night Stalker one, I had a similar revelation, like, oh, wait, what? That's how that happened? Oh, okay. So yeah,
Bryan,
those are my thoughts.
Yeah, Bryan, you saw the first episode of this?
I did not.
Who saw it?
That's me.
Oh, see, yeah.
So you're just conflating the two of us. Me and Scott are just the same person.
Yep, that's what happened. It's like peanut butter and jelly, like Bert
We
and Ernie.
get that all the time.
Yeah.
Dibs on peanut butter.
That's fine by me.
So Scott, you saw
sorry,
the first
I feel
one?
like I was babbling.
Jelly.
Extra chunky.
No, not
I
at
don't mean
all.
to take up your time, Brian. Or not Brian.
This is the Senate floor
Scott.
here. Like you don't.
I yield my time.
You don't have to yield your time.
I do not yield my time, sir.
Brian never yields his time. Derek certainly never yields his time.
What do you mean?
Derek's like there's a
certainly?
time limit.
Certainly. So yes, I've seen the first episode, and I enjoyed it. I mean, I know the outcome of it. I guess so. One of my main concerns would be that this is going to take 4 episodes to get to the conclusion that I already know, or if it's going to dive deeper once that case is finished to deal with some of the other stories in that hotel, which I think and would hope would be, just as interesting, because I'm certain there's a fair number of characters in the documentary to come, or that I'm hoping are coming up, because we had a Cecil Hotel in Calgary too. I think every big city has a Cecil Hotel filled with many of the same kind of people we have on display here. So I'm curious to keep going, but I won't say I'm doing cartwheels exactly, just because I already know the outcome. But it's interesting so far.
That's fair.
As we know from last episode, I was talking about how much Christy watches, true crime television shows. And so we watched this, and I don't usually watch a ton of them, but I was very familiar with this video. with Elisa Lam in the elevator video, because it went super viral. So if you were online during that time, chances are you saw it. And so I'm like, okay, well, yeah, let's watch this. I will say up front, maybe for both some of the discussion I'm going to have, and then also for the show itself, I really think they probably should have done a better job up front, being like giving like trigger warnings for like mental health, self-harm, things of that nature. So like I think that kind of, you know, depending on like the subject matter, I think those kinds of things help. But I think where I kind of had issue with it was kind of the point that Scott brought up, with him not even having seen the rest of it, which is you get a lot of detail in the first episode. So it's like, so how are you going to fill the other 4? I think they had a lot of interesting information. I don't want to spoil too much of this for people who haven't seen it. So I think they give you a decent background on the history of the hotel and other murders and deaths and crimes that had taken place there. And so from a historical perspective, then obviously that's interesting. It kind of gives context to like why this area is, you know, is what it is, how Skid Row came to be. And so that's almost its own documentary. And then there's a documentary that kind of follows Elisa Lam and the investigation around her, both as it specifically pertains to the police. And I think that stuff kind of gets bookended. And then what we have in the middle is we have a real super focus on the internet aspect of this. And I think it's kind of interesting almost in the way that you kind of look at the OJ case and how that became so sensationalized. Or even if you look at Jack the Ripper, how that became so sensationalized. And like that kind of changed the way the media covered, you know, crime moving forward. And so from that point of view, it definitely, I found it was interesting because it shows, and also horrifying, and it shows how an internet mob can essentially, you know, take things in all kinds of crazy directions and what kind of detriment that can have to people who are not even associated to the case. There are other cases certainly where, because I'm no expert, but there are other cases certainly where internet sleuths have helped solve old murders or have helped solve recent crimes. So clearly it helps. But in this case, it doesn't appear, at least what they're showing in the documentary, is that it didn't. And so it also makes it interesting then that some of their subject matter experts are those internet sleuths that they focus so much on. So for me, it was interesting because it felt very disjointed. But I think a lot of the questions that I had after the first episode, by the end of it, they wrap it up. They kind of answer everything. So from that point of view, because I was talking to Christy and, you know, we kind of talk through it as we're watching it. It's like, well, what about this? Or like, did they ever figure this out? And I still had those same questions at the end of episode 1, at the end of episode 2, at the end of episode 3. By 4, they kind of answer it all up and then they wrap it all up and kind of tie all these themes together. So I think they did a pretty good job at that. And like I said, I found the story interesting. I think one of the big takeaways for me was how viral something can go, and then how, you know, where millions and millions of people will see a video, but then the resolution, only a fraction of those people that saw the video actually probably know how it was resolved, myself included. I thought it was still kind of like a unsolved mystery. So I expected that to kind of be where this was headed. I didn't know there was a resolution to this. So, you know, I was one of those people that were in the dark on it. And so I kind of find that fascinating, that this can capture the attention of everybody, but only for a brief period of time. And then when there is a resolution, then it barely makes the news.
Yeah, it's almost like the sexier thing outweighs the not sexy thing, you know, because when the theories are flying and, you know, everybody's speculating who it is, and was it a, you know, like something nefarious, you know, going on, that's when it was getting all the attention. And that elevator video was getting like so much attention, and people saying that it was edited because of whatever, But then when it comes time to actually solve this and come to a conclusion, it's not it's a very straightforward thing, what happened. And so that doesn't, like sell papers or whatever. Papers, I know, not a thing anymore. But it does, like that's not gonna like get people's attention because it's so straightforward. It's just so you can't, there's nothing, like I don't even know, not glamorous, but there's nothing to really capture anyone's attention. And I think that's why so many people didn't know how that there was an ending, at least I think so. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
You know what?
So, you go ahead, Scott.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, you know what I really miss? I really miss Ryson. Do you guys remember the old Forensic Files TV show? 75% of the old TV show, the person was poisoned with ricin. And you just don't see it anymore. Forensic Files came back and they don't, like, no one's killing someone with ricin anymore. And I just miss it. Sorry,
Scott
you were
Drebit,
saying?
Scott Drebit getting nostalgic about toxic substances.
For true crime people, ricin is it's a staple. It's a go-to.
I was just giving that a little extra downtime.
Letting that breathe a little bit.
Yeah, my eyes are just wide open.
So what you're saying is if you get any packages or letters from Scott, don't open it.
I don't.
I wouldn't advise that anyway, really.
Yeah, I don't. But yeah, so like I said, so I'm torn on this one. I know it was a little polarizing online. I haven't seen enough true. Well, I've seen more what I guess what I'd categorize as true crime shows this year than ever. But that's only because I also saw Tiger King, right?
Sure,
that's what it's called. Yeah. I almost said Tiger Shark. And I'm like, that's not it. I saw Tiger King, and I watched it. I
saw Baby Shark.
I saw Tiger King while working out, and this would be sacrilege for a movie, but I have no problem doing this for Tiger King or like I said, or something that I'm not that invested in. I turned it on. Netflix had the double speed or the like 1.5 speed option. I'm like, that is the perfect speed for Tiger King. Because I watched it in like 20-minute episodes or something like that. Because I wanted to see what everybody was talking about.
I remember within a day of that hitting like the social media discourse, I was sick of it. Like I was just like, I don't ever want to hear the names Joe or Exotic ever again.
Or Carol Baskin.
Yeah.
I watched it. I enjoyed it. I have no shame.
Oh yeah, I thought it was fascinating.
Well, we all knew that, Scott.
Yeah. The funny thing is that like there's the Nicolas Cage adaptation that's coming out where he's going to play Joe Exotic, and then there's also another one where I believe Kate McKinnon is going to play Carol Baskin, and I'm thinking, how do you? I mean, usually an adaptation is pretty fascinating, but I'm like, how do you make it more like fascinating and engrossing than that series was on its like? You can't. There's nothing to exaggerate. Like it's all there.
It was like how could you do satire during the Trump administration? Like there's no way to, like you're just recreating what's actually happening.
As we saw, it was impossible.
Right. So yeah, I'm curious to see. I mean, Nicolas Cage's Joe Exotic. That a lot of people will tune in for that, and I'm sure it'll be interesting. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. So there you go.
There you go. Okay. Let's move on. Let's see where we're going. I don't know. I don't know where we're going. I don't know where we go from this. But I think that Derek, you need to tell us about Letters to Santa Claus.
I mean
Satan.
Satan Claus.
Satan Claus.
Don't make
Yeah.
the
You know
same
what?
mistake of
You know
the
what?
main
The
character.
reason why I said, well, no, my mistake was because I forgot, and I always assume that you are, what do you call it? You're wholesome and you're watching your Hallmark channel, and so how dare you watch something that's letters to Satan Claus? It was a Freudian slip.
Yeah, swimming in bourbon.
See, it's easy to mix up the when you're looking at things to record on the DVR, you're like, oh, Santa Claus, that's wholesome, and then you find out later it's actually Satan Claus.
Yes. So you saw letters to Satan Claus. My first question is, well, I have many questions. But a question is, did it come out before Christmas, and why did you just watch it now?
So yeah, the movie did come out before Christmas. It premiered on the Sci-Fi Channel on December 19th, and
it's actually not holiday related.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it just came out then. So it came out then, and basically I didn't watch it until now because, I mean, there was a lot of things going on. The week before Christmas always just seems to get really busy. I mean, I didn't finish wrapping Christmas presents until like mid-afternoon on Christmas Day, like an hour before they were opened. So, I mean, that just gives you an idea of how backlogged my holiday schedule is, seemingly all the time. But I've also I had a ton of like Hallmark movies and things like that, because I put on Hallmark movies when I work, and I just kind of have them on in the background. There's just something very calming about them. And it's funny, I've been watching them. Like, I kind of was like, okay, my mom had been watching them, and I was like, okay, this was years ago. I was like, okay, I'll see what this is about, kind of like, haha, I'll watch this and see what I get out of it. And then I was like, oh, I actually kind of like horror movies, there's a formula there, and there's different subgenres within it. And then I became like obsessed with them over time. And now I just kind of automatically watch them. And I've been waiting for a horror take on a Hallmark movie, because I always thought that Hallmark movies are one step away from being a horror movie. Like, what if the character doesn't fall in love? It feels like the town would entirely turn on them. And it feels like if they turned left instead of turning right, that it could easily become a horror movie. So I think that's what I'm also attracted to these films by, is that there's something underneath where it kind of feels like it is a horror movie, but it's, because things go a certain way, it stays this charming romantic comedy. And so I was really excited when I saw that Sci-Fi was doing like a horror version of a Hallmark movie, and they threw Satan in there as kind of the driving force behind the plot, where the main character writes a letter to Satan accidentally instead of Santa, and then Satan kills her parents. And basically we flash forward a number of years, and now she's going back to this like charming Hallmark town, but Satan comes back with a vengeance and things go crazy. So it's kind of like a horror movie, but it's also a spoof of Hallmark movies, where like suddenly there's like multiple single guys in town who are widows, and there's like rules that you have to follow in accordance with like a Hallmark movie structure. And then on top of that, you have Satan, who's going around killing people. So there's a lot to take in, but it's a lot of fun.
So because this is sci-fi, is Satan played by like Brian Austin Green or something like that?
No, but it is very over the top, particularly with the Satan character. It's a very like, yeah, there's nothing subtle about the character of Satan in this, and the deaths are very over the top, and it's very tongue in cheek, and it is very sci-fi, but in a good way.
So does Satan have horns? Like what? I guess I'm trying to figure out, what does Satan look like in this? Like, yes. Is he like red? Like what?
Yeah, he's kind of your classic idea of Satan, with the goat horns and like the big ears and the big like sharp teeth. He kind of looks like a monster that I don't know. There's this very like an ancient kind of version of Satan, like a beast version of Satan, kind of almost like Sabrina, but a little more, I don't know, a little more like goblin-y.
And we do have the poster and the trailer on Daily Dead. I say it with a question mark, but I'm the one who published them, so I can say it definitively. Tamika, we have imagery and a video on Daily Dead.
Okay. Googling.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie you have to see to believe. I'm really happy with a lot of the stuff they subverted and kind of like winking at the absurdity of some of the Hallmark plots, and then it kind of becomes its own thing by the end, where it's kind of embracing its own identity. But it's definitely a lot of fun. So, do you think? First of all, is this going to be a regular yearly watch now for you on the holidays? You know, I could see if like Sci-Fi aired it again, I would probably tune in for it because there's some moments that I wouldn't mind revisiting. So would you recommend this? Would you recommend this to our listeners then for next holiday? I would. I think you'll appreciate it more if you are familiar with any type of holiday romantic comedy, specifically if you watch Hallmark or Lifetime movies around that time of year. I mean, there's definitely some stuff like Emma Jean Sutherland, who directed it, and Michael Zara, who wrote it, I think have a really good understanding of all of they're kind of like the Randy Meeks, like, you know, the rules of the horror genre. They know the rules of the Hallmark movie, and there's definitely like you'll appreciate it a lot more if you know the rules of the Hallmark movie or the Lifetime movie. But I think you'll enjoy it either way. If you just keep an open mind and you have fun with it.
I'm interested in it, but I'm almost as interested in the plot that you were starting to tell before you got to the real one, which would be where a group of actors from a Hallmark or a group of characters from a Hallmark movie somehow get transported into a horror movie and they have to try to survive. And
I love it.
I want to see that movie as well.
Me too. Might just have to make it to see it because I think that would be a lot of fun because there's...
Well, there you go. Let's go all Smodcast on this thing. I mean, it worked
right.
for us.
There you go. Right. Yeah.
And then Jonathan can not stand and applaud when we screen the movie.
Thanks, Derek. But yeah, you know, I mean, I want it to be, what do you call it? You'll know if I love it because I'll stand and applaud.
Yes. I know that
it's an honest, what do you call it? It will be an honest reaction.
Wow. I'm like really digging the makeup here. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, it looks like fun.
Yeah, there's some clever kills in there too. There's a snowman centric kill. There's some cookie baking death involved in there. So that they have a lot of fun with finding new ways to kill people with the Christmas themed things.
The town is called Ornaments. That's awesome.
Yeah. And Karen Knox is she plays this she plays a news person who is looking to get a promotion, and she's got to go to her hometown to do a story, and her name is Holly Frost, but she changed it to Holly Winters, and then everyone assumes that she got her. She's like, no, screw that. I just changed my name because I wanted to. And it's just a lot of fun. She's really good in the lead role in this. So yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe Sci-Fi will continue to do more stuff like that in the future, but
I think there's a market for it. I think there's a market for low budget holiday horrors in the style of Hallmark movies. So yeah, hopefully they keep it up.
I just can't believe they landed Karen Knox.
Yeah, she took the role and ran with it. I don't think I'd I wasn't really familiar with her work before this.
I have no idea who that is.
Nice.
I knew it. That's why I left it. That's why I left it. I was going to do the crickets thing, but then Derek jumped right in.
Oh man, I want to let him run with
He
that
was
for a little bit.
dangling that bait.
Line
that's
and
sad.
sinker.
That is
Set
sad.
the hook. There we
Yeah.
go.
Oh, and I do have
Because I
another.
had to stop and go, Karen Cox, Karen Cox, Karen Cox, Karen.
No, I'm like, I know this is a bit. I know this is
So
a
the
bit.
heads up.
So
And then I
sorry,
went,
Derek.
oh no, Brian's just an asshole.
And I do have an update from last week's episode when we were talking about the fact that I was getting spoiled watching WandaVision and that I was going to get up at 3 a.m. now to start watching my show. It's my show, by the way.
Right.
And so we did it. And now I'm on Disney time. And so now I'm every Friday, 3 a.m. I wake up Christy, and we did see our first like on time episode of WandaVision. And I do it
DST.
again.
Disney
Yep,
Standard
DST exactly. So and there was nothing to spoil this week. There was literally nothing. So of course the week I picked it, I'm like, I could have slept in. There is nothing you could. There's nothing. It was hashtagable. So literally there was no spoilers. There was no huge reveals. I'm like, this was not the week to do it, but it'll pay off. It will.
This was your
It
driver
will.
to make sure you could do it, and then
Yeah.
Yes.
And I heard that
Yeah.
the remaining 3 episodes are an hour, so I'll be up from 3 to 4 in a day and change watching WandaVision.
Now, do you go back to bed, or are you up for the day?
No. I definitely go to bed.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not an early riser. Honestly, if I didn't have a more structured work schedule, I would normally be up till that time anyway. So I would just go to bed at 4. I used to have a flipped work schedule because I would work with offshore engineers who were in India, and then I would go to sleep. I would wake up around dinner time. That's what I did for a long time. And so it's been very hard to unwind that.
That's
So
Wow.
oh.
I would much rather work those hours. It was so quiet. I caught up on so many movies.
The rest of the world is sleeping.
Yeah, I liked my vampire hours, but no, and I did that for a while. I mean, I did that for at least 5 years. But now I get up at the crack of 9. So I know
Like a
people who get up
drone.
I know people who get up at like 5 in the morning and they start their day then. I'm like, I could not start my day at 5 or 6 in the morning. What do you do in the morning? Like you have breakfast, but then you need like another breakfast because it takes so long to get to lunch. Like, what do you do?
You have a power snack.
All right there, Samwise.
Right. What was that bread that they would eat that would keep you
Lembas
full?
bread?
Yes.
He says immediately like a nerd.
That was a test, Brian.
Yeah.
I failed.
Yeah, that's right. Like a nerd.
Yeah, I got to watch the Lord of the Rings trilogies on 4K now. I'm just waiting for it to hit a streaming service or for the price to lower. So I haven't seen it in ages. I haven't seen it since theaters. It got re-released at some point. I saw it.
We actually did a run through during whatever part of the pandemic. Who knows at what point? But yeah, we took that as an excuse to run through the original trilogy. Holds up.
Nice. Yeah, I would think so. I'm curious about how all the CG holds up on 4K. I'm assuming it's gonna look good, but I'm wondering if like Weta did any work with it, because part of the problem with some of these movies that were, I mean, is that the effects were done at 1080 or lower. So I don't know what the case was for Lord of the Rings. Like, I don't know. I mean, because like for Star Wars, I mean, I understand why they're enhancing some of that. Like, even if you can't tell, like they had to, like the lightsabers, it just that effect, and some of the other ones just wouldn't hold up.
I mean, to take nothing away from Jurassic Park whatsoever, groundbreaking technologically in every way. It's starting to show. The seams are starting to show a little more now. you know, which is fine. You know, it doesn't take anything away, but it's interesting how even small fractions of clarity and improvement in the technology can make enough of a difference now at this point where you're just starting to notice, you know, effects that are starting to show their age from almost 30 years ago. That's how far we've come, you know?
So with that in mind, like having just recently watched, or I guess rewatched the Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz Mummy sequel for the first time in a while, I would imagine if they did a 4K version of that, the Scorpion King is going to look somewhat similar to like a stick figure, because it is not good. It is rough stuff.
Well, in their defense, though, I think Scorpion King aside, I think a lot of the effects from the original and the first sequel hold up. Like until you get to the Scorpion King.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm just, well,
which
for sure the first movie with
which I think makes it that much more of a question mark as to like what the hell went wrong.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I would love to figure that out, because I remember we had talked about we revisited the original Mummy for its 20th anniversary a couple of years ago, and I think the effects in the first one really, for that time, like especially back when it was so experimental with CG, I think it actually really holds up well. But I do know exactly what you mean, because there's that moment in the second film when The Rock shows up as the Scorpion King, and you're like, wait a minute, this is where we have entered a different realm here.
Is this like the rough cut? Are they not done yet? What happened?
I don't know. And maybe you know, because they had the Scorpion King movie come out shortly after that. Maybe it was like, okay, we need to build this up for the rest of the franchise.
I mean, I think at some point, and we haven't done a lot of it yet, but I think it'll be more normal place or commonplace for like these movies to get upgrades, because they're just not going to hold up. And like the investment isn't there right now, but as you know, CG systems and like easily duplicated like technology and textures and you know, art packs for what do you call it, for lack of a better word, become available. Like these resources will just be reusable. I know James Cameron was doing that, and that was his big pitch for Avatar, was that like we're building, you know, digital architecture that we can keep using for other movies. But like, I can understand like why you wouldn't want to do a full like Star Wars special edition, but like I'm all for a redo of the CG Rock and the Scorpion King. Like if it were easy to do, like I don't find it sacrilege, and maybe I'll feel differently 10 years from now. They're replacing everything. I'm like, how could you? But like, I'm okay with an upgrade for certain movies.
I'm on the fence with that. Yeah, I use the you invoked the Star Wars thing. So yeah, that was going to be my point of like, you don't want to go all George Lucas on stuff and you know, kind of turn it into a British bulldog. But I don't know how I feel about that. Like, would part of me appreciate someone going back and making Escape from LA look at least somewhat presentable in terms of the CGI? Maybe, but there's also, I think, a certain charm to going back and seeing like the swings that people were taking before the technology was ready for it yet. So for me, there's almost kind of like there's a kind of almost like an artifact nature to it that I almost want to kind of preserve that.
Well, yeah, it was one of the first memes. I mean,
well, I think one of the big things about that, though, and I think one of the biggest problems, because we're getting into Star Wars, everybody, one of the biggest problems with the special editions, I've always said, is that George Lucas didn't make the originals available. And when he did that, he kind of erased people's childhoods. And I know that that's a little extreme, but that's obviously how some people took it. And so while I don't feel that way personally, I still do. I'm like, well, why don't you put the originals out? Like, I don't like the special editions as much. I would like to have the originals available. I've heard like conflicting things about them not having all the source material. They could work through that. So I think if you had like both editions available, kind of like Aliens right now, I have the director's cut, I have the theatrical cut. So like if I had the Mummy 2, you know, original cut, and I had the one with like an actual like Scorpion King that looks like The Rock. Like, and then I have the option. And if, I want to show, my kids or relatives like the original and be like, this is what it used to look like, then I have that option. I think for Star Wars, the problem with that is it was taken away. And unless you went another way with it, or kept your laser discs, like there weren't options to watch it. There's not a readily available option for the masses to go see those original movies. And that's all I'll say about it.
Yeah, just leave shit as it was. Clean it up, make it look nicer, make it look pretty. But as Bryan was saying, so much of what we see, the charm comes from imperfection. Now, obviously, the 8-bit rock is quite the imperfection.
He's like a pixel.
But those are also movie moments that I wouldn't trade for anything, So I'm totally siding with Bryan on that. Is just no, just it's fine. Thank you.
What the tough thing I have with this though is, and this goes back to some of the like discourse online, and I really don't know what side I pick on this yet, because there's like one is like me personally, I'm fine with the old stuff, but I think about all the like the teens that will not watch older movies, and so they are skipping classics because they look too old. And so we've seen Disney they will replace the artwork on their old animated movies. I mean, they've been doing it, whether or not people realize that they've been doing it to clean them up. But then I see people that they're like DC starting to do that with comic books. I'm like, well, that's sacrilege because you're losing the meaning of the original one. So I struggle with it. There is a fine line, but then I do wonder, and maybe the answer isn't cleaning them up, but I do wonder, like for people like my brother-in-law, and he's in his late 20s. I mean, he won't watch a movie before, like if it's before 2000, like it looks too old and he won't watch it. So like if they had if they like modernized or they cleaned up some of these movies, brought them to 4K and like enhanced the effects, like he'd watch it, and so would millions of other people. So I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that the more time goes on, the less people see some of these older movies. And I wonder how we fix that. We don't necessarily fix it by adding CG. Like I don't want CG, zombies in Night of the Living Dead, right? Or colorizing it. Like that's not going to fix it. So I don't have an answer. It's just a real weird situation.
I want the Millennium Falcon to take out Rick and Lara in Casablanca.
You don't, you're going to get what you're going to get what you wish for at some
I'm
point.
just saying, that's the road we're heading down.
Yeah. It's
But the point that you raised there, it almost sent a shiver down my spine, because then it becomes, do we really want to change movies the way they were to bring in new audiences? Do we want to change how a movie is to attract a new crowd? And that just, there's something about that doesn't sit right to me. Do you know what I mean?
That's what remakes are for.
Right. And again, and I have no, like I said, and I'm not necessarily, like I said, picking a side here. I have no good answers for this. Like the weird thing is when like more people have seen the remakes, like 90% of the people who have seen a movie have seen the remake, or 99, and then they're not watching the older ones. It's like, well, what do you do with that? Again, I don't like remaking them isn't necessarily a great idea. Like they're how do you, and I guess this goes back to like education, like maybe that's the answer, right? How do you introduce, the youth of the world to these movies at an earlier age so that they're more comfortable watching movies of any age? I mean, this could be the same thing with music, right? But I think the thing that, I always run into, and I've been saying this for years on Daily Dead, is so few people have seen the movies that a lot of, people, in the horror community assume everybody's seen. Like so few people have seen Night of the Living Dead. most of the people who've seen The Walking Dead have never seen Night of the Living Dead. That's crazy.
I've gotten a little bit of crap today. This was the first time that a Let's Scare Brian to Death has gotten like, how have you not seen this movie yet? Because it was
why were people picking on you for that?
Because they're mean. Nice. No, I mean it was Carrie. So I mean that is one where it's like, you really haven't seen that? Like, no, I really haven't.
We all have
those blind spots.
No, he took some ribbon for that.
Yeah, and I don't think it was all. None of it was mean spirited.
No.
But it was like I think it's. I don't know. I guess with this whole, there's a lot of discussion right now going on about like black and white movies and like getting really contentious. And I'm so wholeheartedly in the indifferent camp. Like I like older movie. Well, let me say I've developed a taste for older movies. I used to, I think, be in the camp of like, I wouldn't watch stuff. It was before like the 80s. Like I didn't have it. It wasn't a rule. I just never really bothered. But, I think my, I don't know what you want to call it, cinematic experience has been richer as I've gone back and looked at some of the older stuff. But if people don't want to, I don't know. Maybe just we're a year into a pandemic and there's only so many things I can care about. But I just don't care that much if someone doesn't like black and white movies. Like that's not really going to change my life a whole lot, I guess.
Yeah, I think, 100%. I don't think that there's any need to gatekeep. So if somebody is a horror fan and they only like new horror movies, I mean, that's totally fine. And I'm not saying that you're saying otherwise.
Yes, you are, you bastard.
The big challenge for me though is like, again, using my brother-in-law as the example, like I know the movies he loves and I'm trying to get that spark in his eye from some of these older movies that I know he would love if he'd give them a chance. And so I'm like, what's the movie that's going to unlock it? Right. For a lot of us, there was, that movie that was like, okay, like I really like this movie that's like, decades, earlier than a lot of the movies I usually like. And now, maybe for some people, like they find a Hammer movie and they're like, okay, well now I have dozens of movies I can watch. Or somebody who sees Universal Monsters for the first time and now they're like, I own the Blu-ray box set. Like I love seeing people experience that kind of thing. And it's, like I said, it just becomes tougher and tougher the older we get. It's like I said, it's a real tricky thing to handle. And so, yeah, like I said, I wonder how we get people interested.
What I think is so encouraging is so many, I think, of the people that we follow online on social media have children or nieces and nephews, etc., that they're imparting a film education to, not forcing, but you see the interaction between, the grown up showing the children one movie, and then that sparks interest in, another movie that heads in another direction. You see these parents, etc., family members leading these new kids that are getting into horror. And it's really it's encouraging to see, and I know the next generation of horror is going to be in good hands. I'm not worried.
And kind of like we were talking about restorations with horror and how well taken care of the horror genre's past is. I think as people that love the genre, I think we're the best ambassadors to. We're kind of responsible to not force that onto the future generations, but kind of show them, hey, if you want to check this out, here's some really good stuff to check out. And I think that's, for this genre specifically, I think that's going to really help as far as, keeping that alive and respecting the past and showing people really good recommendations that, other genres, it feels like horror, like the people that love horror are really going to go that extra mile to keep it alive and show people here's stuff to check out. Here's where you can watch it. And because unfortunately, you know, with like a school curriculum, it's not going to be like, okay, we're going to watch, you know, in a perfect world, maybe in school you'd watch Night of the Living Dead and The Shining, or well, maybe not in Scott's class, but you would watch these movies that would that, you know, people would be like, oh, okay, now I know where to go for the essential classics, and you might not get that otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the topic of curation, I mean, that's definitely somewhere where we can help. You know, whether it's our listeners or us, that like very rarely, not saying it's not going to happen, but very rarely are you going to see streaming algorithms kind of pushing some of these lesser known classics, where there are things that we can recommend. And it mostly because with the, you know, a lot of these algorithms are going to be weighted to, you know, Netflix, whether it's their TV shows or movies or things like that. Netflix is going to be, you know, kind of pushing their Netflix originals, or Amazon will be doing the same. So their algorithm will weight that. And so definitely, you know, custom curation and us being able to make these suggestions is kind of a way to keep these things going, along with, you know, what we were talking about earlier, which is, you know, the you know, labels like Vinegar Syndrome and Severin, putting these titles out and restoring them so that they're not lost to time.
And it's all good, you know. Each one has its benefits. Streaming has its benefits. Physical media has its benefits. Doesn't matter how you get your horror, folks, as long as you get your horror.
Get your horror here.
One a day keeps the doctor away.
Yeah.
Maybe not Dr. Giggles, though.
And with all that, we are going to close this episode of Corpse Club. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you to my co-hosts for chatting on a wide variety of topics. Always enjoy getting together with y'all. We want to thank Bryan, of course, our engineer, for helping us out each and every episode as well. And we especially want to thank our listeners who have signed up for a Corpse Club membership. Keep in mind that if you sign up as a Corpse Club member, you can get a t-shirt, a pin, Corpse Club membership card, and you can pick an episode topic. That's an option as well. So if you want to pick any episode topic you want to hear everybody come back for a third episode on Killer Sofa, we'll do it. And also as a reminder, with it being Black History Month, this month all Corpse Club revenue we receive will be going to Black Lives Matter and other charities to support Black communities. We'll also have a giveaway that we will be launching later this month, which will give you an opportunity to donate for a chance to win some pretty cool prizes. Make sure to visit corpseclub.com and you can check out our latest episodes. You can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Every rating and review really helps. You can find us on Google Play, SoundCloud, and some other podcast providers, including Spotify. We're most recently on Amazon Podcasts, so you can check us out over there as well. If you want to get in touch, you can reach out anytime. We're at contact@corpseclub.com on Twitter. We're at Daily Dead News and at Corpse Club. And on Instagram and Facebook, we're under Corpse Club as well. Thanks again for listening. And until next time, stay scary.